All right, welcome to The Record. I'm Rob Astorino in for Greta Van Susteren. So you've been watching President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speak at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida. Trump honored Netanyahu for being a wartime prime minister at the highest level. Netanyahu said thank you, and by the way, I'm going to give you an award for Israel, an Israel Prize, he's calling it. Senior correspondent John Huddy has been following the president in Mar-a-Lago. John, so tell me what else happened today with this visit between these two high-level discussions here.
Well, before the prime minister even arrived at Mar-a-Lago, he met with, and I should start with this, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and then he arrived at Mar-a-Lago. They addressed some of the media out front about what they were going to be talking about, some of the discussion points, Gaza, Hamas's disarmament, Iran, Syria, and also Turkey, Qatar, and that's something that they touched on right now. This is, by the way, the sixth meeting that both leaders have had since President Trump took office back in January. It's the fifth time, Rob, that the prime minister has come to the United States to meet with the president. They talked about their mutual respect for one another. You're going to hear a soundbite from the prime minister, but also the president in his the press conference, in his words at the press conference, talked about and was asked a question about Hamas's disarmament. Here's in part what the president said about that. Listen.
Push for that today.
Well, we talked about Hamas and we talked about disarmament, and they're going to be given a very short period of time to disarm, and we'll see how that works out. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in charge of that from our side, but if they don't disarm, as they agreed to do, they agreed to it, and then they'll be held to pay.
He's achieved remarkable things in the Middle East because we work together. We talk about our ideas. Sometimes we have different ideas, but we work it out. And most of the time we see eye to eye. But it's been a remarkable experience, and this was a very, very productive meeting.
Now, the president, talking about Hamas, said that it will, quote, be horrible for them if they don't adhere to the terms of the agreement, Rob. And Trump added it will not only be Israel, but other countries that will put pressure and possibly take action against Hamas to make sure that the terrorist group does indeed adhere to the terms of that ceasefire agreement and disarms. Regarding West Bank settlement, this has been another thorny issue. There's been reports, and we've heard the same, that President Trump has grown increasingly frustrated about Prime Minister Netanyahu and Israel's policies regarding the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, as it's referred by many, saying that, quote, he will do the right thing, responding or referring to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his policies regarding the West Bank and Israeli settlements there. Regarding Turkey, and again, Israel has been very concerned, Rob, about Turkey's future foothold in Gaza, involved in basically an international security and stabilization force there. The president saying, I know President Erdogan, the president of Turkey, very well. They're not going to have a problem with Turkey, referring to Israel and Turkey's relations. And when it comes to Gaza, that remains to be seen. That remains obviously an issue for a lot of Israeli officials. And then as far as phase two, and I just want to kind of lay out some of the bullet points, the president saying, I'm not concerned about Israel's doing. They've lived up to the plan. They are strong. They are solid. So really dispelling some of the rumors and speculation about a strained relationship between both countries and between both leaders. That, in part, what we're seeing coming out of this meeting. As far as Iran, again, this was another focal point of discussion. The president being clear, saying if they're building up again, we'll have no choice but to eradicate that buildup. He's saying there's concerns about there's possibly building up other sites for maybe future nuclear facilities. He said, I hope they're not doing that because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2 having to be deployed to attack those facilities like we saw back in June. The prime minister saying that in regards to Syria, they were asked about Syria. The president was asked about Syria. Al-Shara, the president of Syria, saying he's a strong guy. We get along with him great. And then Prime Minister Netanyahu saying our interest is to have a peaceful border with Syria. We also want to secure the Syrian Druze populations, including those in Israel, along with Christian communities, but protecting those communities in southern Syria. That's something that I saw, Rob, when I was last in Israel back in August. I was taken with the IDF across the border into Syria to see an IDF field hospital that was treating those Syrian Druze communities that were being attacked by some of the splinter groups that is splintered off from the government. And that's something that Syria and that the President al-Sharaa are contending with at this point. And then finally, when it comes to Lebanon, the president saying Hezbollah and concerns that Hezbollah is not disarming. President Trump saying Hezbollah has been, quote, behaving badly. So we'll see what happens there. So tackling a lot of those points over the couple hours of discussion here. But I think the main takeaway is that both countries, both leaders continue to have a very strong relationship, that going back to President Trump's first term and that continuing today, Rob.
Good stuff, John. Good wrap up of what happened. A lot of news made between those two, and not so subtle hint of you better watch yourself, Iran. Let's talk to Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, and he's the author, of course, of the book, The Preventive State, Alan Dershowitz. He's with us now. So, Professor, what do you make of this meeting between these two? I mean, Bibi comes all the way across. They meet for quite a while, obviously very cordial. They seem on the same page. Is there something special, though, about the timing of this meeting between them?
Yeah, I recently spoke both to President Trump and to Prime Minister Netanyahu. They're both friends I speak to from time to time. And this was the strongest meeting between them. Of all the 6 meetings they've had, this is the one in which both President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu showed what happens when Israel and the United States work together. Now, the rest of the world is moving away from Israel, but Trump is moving closer and closer to Israel. And I think he sent a very powerful message to Iran that they better not be developing the capability of sending rockets to Israeli civilian cities and developing more nuclear weapons, because if that happens, there are going to be more B-2s. But, you know, Israel doesn't even need American support. All Israel needs is a green light from Donald Trump to go in on its own and destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. Look, in the end, and this didn't come up today, but there'll never be peace in the Middle East unless there's regime change in Iran. The current Iranian regime is the major barrier to peace in the Middle East. And if President Trump wants to be known as the peace president, he has to be in support of regime change. And then there can be deals with Saudi Arabia and all the other deals. But this was an extraordinarily successful meeting between the president and the prime minister, and between the United States and Israel. And I think it bodes very, very well for the future of the relationship.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of good stuff came out of this. And maybe what Trump was saying, when I don't even want to waste the gas on a B-52 bomber, was exactly what you were alluding to, that he's just going to give Israel the go-ahead to do what they need to do. Maybe that's kind of what he was hinting at. Also part of this peace deal is the Board of Peace, as it's being called. It would oversee the reconstruction in Gaza. Trump obviously says he would love to lead the board. You know, he's the master builder there. How do you see this process playing out? And who else might be on this board?
Well, we know that the former Prime Minister of England was supposed to be on the board, and now he was apparently vetoed by Hamas. So we're going to see some vetoes, and we're going to see some exchanges. But I think we'll see some American leaders. I think we'll see some leaders from European countries, probably not from England. England has kind of disqualified itself. I don't think any country that foolishly recognized a Palestinian state where there is no state, and without even demanding that they recognize Israel, I think every one of those countries is disqualified. So is Turkey disqualified. So it's going to be interesting whether they can get a half a dozen people or a dozen people to serve on a board of peace. I don't think it's going to be easy, because so many countries have disqualified themselves by their foolish and negative recognition of a fake Palestinian state.
Well, hopefully the UN will have nothing to do with the reconstruction of Gaza.
With it, it's doomed to failure. The UN can have nothing to do with it. The UN is now a major source of conflict rather than a source for peace. I'd like to see the United States and Israel get out of the UN eventually, unless the UN changes its policies, and maybe they will change some of its policies. But right now, they are a negative force in the world.
So apparently there's no plan for a Palestinian state, but the Gaza peace agreement would have the Palestinian Authority kind of take over at the end of 2027. In your mind, what does Palestinian leadership if you can call it that, actually look like?
Well, there are all kind of rumors about this guy Barghouti who's in prison. Maybe he'll get out and become the great, great hope, the great leader. Look, Palestinians haven't earned themselves a state. They have to earn a state the way the Jewish people earned a state over hundreds of years of state building. You can't just create a state out of nothing. Maybe someday there'll be a Palestinian state, but it can be a state without terrorists, without Hamas, and without the current Palestinian leadership. So I think it's a possible dream for the future, but it's not a reality in my lifetime.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, always good to have you on. Hope you have a great new year.
You too. Thank you, and thanks to your viewers. Have a good year.
All right, coming up, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not the only world leader visiting Mar-a-Lago. We'll tell you who else visited the president's resort when the record continues.
What if getting older didn't mean living with joint discomfort, brain fog, or low energy? Qualia Senolytic is the only all-in-one clinically tested formula with 9 ingredients designed to help your body clear aging cells. Taken just 2 days a month, this regimen works at the cellular level to rejuvenate energy and support longevity, helping you stay active and energized. With Qualia Senolytic, life truly gets better with age. Start today at qualialife.com/BOGO.
Are you or a loved one a military veteran that has been diagnosed with mesothelioma? Do you have questions about getting the best treatment or paying medical bills? Have you received the proper care and compensation you deserve? Let our firm serve you with the same dedication you served your country. We are exclusively devoted to helping those with mesothelioma. Call now to get this free book, and we'll answer any question you have. We'll even visit you.
Call 800-555-8958 or go to mesobook.com.
I never considered myself an alcoholic, but drinking affected my job, health, and relationships. A powerful medication helped me take back control. Now I no longer feel the urge to drink, and the same pill that helped me could help you. Text Newsmax to 710-710 to learn more.
There are only a few men I'd trust with my life. 2 of them built this wallet. I've known the guys behind Proof for nearly 20 years, and we've been through hell and back together. When they told me they were building the wallet, I just said, bill me now, I'm in. This isn't some fashion piece. This isn't just some trend. These wallets are a direct reflection of the kind of men who built it. It's built to last, built to function, and designed to carry everything you need and more. If anything happens to it, they'll take care of it. No questions, no fine print. If you knew the guys who created this wallet, you wouldn't carry anything else. Go check them out, because they built this thing right.
This is the story of the one who doesn't just see a broken dock. He sees lost revenue, a late night, and work stalled to a halt. Thankfully, he has the experience to handle whatever comes his way and has Grainger on his side, offering access to technical product specialists and the scale to deliver fast, so he can keep his business in gear and always moving forward. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
From the beginning, America has depended on the courage and resilience of those who serve in our armed forces. For 250 years, they've been there for us without fail, putting their lives on the line, defending our freedom, helping us become the nation we are today. At Wounded Warrior Project, our mission honors the past by building a better future for post-9/11 veterans, service members, and their families. Our life-changing programs and services help warriors improve their mental and physical health, access the VA benefits they've earned, and connect with their communities, their purpose, and each other. Warriors have given us their best. Join us in supporting them through the next 250 years of strength, resilience, and recovery. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/USA250.
For pain in multiple spots like here, here, or here, Salonpas patches stick firmly and remove comfortably once your pain is gone. Salonpas. It's good medicine.
President Trump says Russia and Ukraine are closer than ever to a peace deal. Yesterday, President Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met for about 3 hours at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Here's President Trump just before that meeting began.
I think we're in final stages of talking, and we're going to see. Otherwise, it's going to go on for a long time. It'll either end, or it's going to go on for a long time, and Millions of additional people are going to be killed. Millions.
All right, let's bring in former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Kurt Volker. So, Ambassador, you know, Trump said he spoke to Putin after his meeting with Zelensky, and here's what he had to say about that.
We had a very good talk. We spoke at 8 o'clock in the morning hour time, and it was a very productive talk. I mean, we have a few very thorny issues, as you can imagine. He knows about thorny issues probably better than anybody in the world, but it's working out. We have a couple of issues that we're going to get resolved, hopefully, and if we get them resolved, you're going to have peace.
Not easy, as he's finding out. I mean, you got these two people at war and hate each other and long histories. So how is Trump dealing with these relationships?
Right. Well, Rob, thanks for having me. And it's interesting here because President Trump seems to give credit to Vladimir Putin for what Putin says to him. So he repeated in the press conference at Mar-a-Lago with President Zelensky, he said Vladimir Putin wants peace, he wants to end this, he wants to see Ukraine be successful. Well, all the evidence is to the contrary. Russia attacked Ukraine, it has been bombing Ukrainian cities, it still does it every night, trying to bring down the electricity grid. It is engaged in assassination attempts on President Zelensky. So there's a big disconnect between the credence that President Trump seems to give Vladimir Putin and what we actually see with our own eyes. Now, that being said, I think what President Trump is doing is actually moving things in the right direction because he is getting the United States, Ukraine, and Europe aligned around what a reasonable peace could look like. And that's what this 20-point plan is. That's what they were negotiating in Mar-a-Lago with the Ukrainians. This is good because it will present something to the Russians that is perfectly reasonable. I have every confidence that Putin will reject it, but at least that is clarifying what the actual situation is.
So earlier today, President Trump was asked about an alleged drone attack on one of Putin's residences. This is what Trump had to say in response to that.
I don't like it. It's not good. I heard about it this morning. You know who told me about it? President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. One thing to be offensive, because they were offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it.
So, I mean, he learned it from Putin, but Zelensky's saying that's not true.
Right. So this is entirely predictable. Every time President Trump and President Zelensky get together and start making progress on what peace should look like, Putin does something to disrupt it. In this case, today, he tells Trump that, oh, Zelensky bombed one of my houses. First off, we don't know if it's true. We don't know, even if it is true, whether Putin was there or not. By the way, we do know that the Russians have tried to assassinate Zelensky many times. But this is being brought up by Putin in a phone call with Trump only for getting the reaction from Trump that he wants, which is to try to disrupt the progress being made.
All is fair in love and war, I thought, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
Ambassador, good to have you.
Rob, great to see you. Thank you.
All right, coming up, after today's meeting between Trump and Netanyahu, could the U.S. strike Iran again? More ahead when the record continues.
48% of Americans don't get enough magnesium, which is vital for bone, nerve, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol's Magnesium Glycinate. It's formulated for high absorption and is gentle on the stomach. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops, no needles.
That's right. The two big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs and weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
Can't find it anywhere? The Wellness Company has it. No consultation needed. Simply order online and use promo code SLIM to save $100. Visit dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
Think of all the places that could expose you to identity theft. If something happens, LifeLock provides a dedicated US-based restoration specialist with expertise to make the right calls and take the right steps to fix your case start to finish. In fact, we're so confident restoration is guaranteed or your money back. Don't face identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with the leader in identity theft protection, LifeLock, for the threats you can't control.
Don't kibble your dog.
Oh, hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
But what's wrong with this? It's premium stuff.
Let's check it out. It's still kibble. And even the best kibbles still get kibbled. Which means they're ultra-processed at extremely high temperatures that destroy the nutrients in the food. Then they have to add synthetic nutrients back in just to meet label requirements.
Are they all like this?
Sadly, they are. These poor pups have low energy, bad digestion, itchiness, and allergies, all from eating ultra-processed junk food for every single meal. But at Dr. Marty, we gently freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, locking in their nutrients.
Real meats, real fruits, real veggies, nothing else. Never kibbled.
You got it, kid. So don't kibble your dog. Dr. Marty will make your best friend healthier, and they're gonna love it, guaranteed.
Dad drills. Let's go. Have you officially named a guardian? My parents? Doesn't count. Guardianship must be legal before it's official. Luckily, Trust and Will makes it incredibly easy. Visit trustandwill.com today and make it count. Trust and Will.
My body is my livelihood. Staying active, a good diet, and the right supplements, that is essential as a fighter. So I take it serious. It all starts with the right fuel. Balance of nature just makes sense. Whole fruit and vegetable ingredients, simple. I am CP the champ. Balance of nature fits perfectly into my routine. It's basically a no-brainer.
Lock in 50% off for 1 year.
Today's meeting between President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu not only addressed the next step for peace in Gaza, but the growing threat of Iran. The U.S. bombed Iran's nuclear sites in June, and President Trump said Iran's nuclear capabilities were obliterated. But Israel warns Iran has since been rebuilding its ballistic missile program, missiles that could actually hit Israel. And over the weekend, Iran's president said Tehran was in a full-scale war with the United States, Israel, and Europe. So given all this, could the U.S. strike Iran again? President Trump hinted we might. Middle East correspondent Zach Anders is in Tel Aviv tonight. Zach, how are you?
Hey, doing good. You know, there's some remarkable scenes today in Tehran, which I'll get to in a moment. The Ayatollah may have more to worry about. But first, some reaction to the Trump-Netanyahu meeting, and it's coming from Hamas, a Hamas account posting in Arabic, quote, "We still trust in President Trump's ability to achieve peace in the Gaza Strip and the region because he is capable of forcing the occupation to do so." Hamas uses the word occupation when they refer to Israel. Hamas also confirming, and notably for the first time, that its longtime military leader Mohammed Sinwar and longtime spokesperson Abu Obaida are in fact dead. Their months-delayed admission comes as a Saudi television report says Hamas is preparing internal leadership elections and moving ahead to appoint a new head of the terror group. Of course, the previous are now all dead. To the east, and those remarkable scenes in the Iranian capital, Tehran, shopkeepers vow to protest again tomorrow for a third straight day. Iranian reports say hundreds of stores are shuttered, thousands in the streets, and shops in the famous Grand Bazaar, the gold market, they've all closed as protesters are demanding action over the collapse of the Iranian currency, the rial, which is in free fall right now. The government had replaced the head of the central bank today as well. State police are firing tear gas and rubber bullets to break up the crowds, heard at times chanting death to the dictator. And those protests are still going late tonight. Iran's currency now trading near 1.4 million rial on the dollar. Inflation is surging. Food prices are up 72% from a year ago, and growing fears that the Iranian economy is nearing its breaking point. Iran's interior ministry blames a foreign plot, and state media claims protesters have enemy support, even warning that the unrest could spark renewed conflict with Israel. And get this, Israel's spy agency, the Mossad, adding fuel to the fire, posting in Farsi, the Iranian language, directly addressing protesters, quote, "Let's come out to the streets together. The time has come. We are with you, not just from afar and verbally. We are with you in the field as well." So Mossad, the spy, is saying we're with you in the field as well. Now, as for this meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, when it does come to Iran, despite immense Iranian losses in the 12-day war last June, their air defenses were non-existent. The regime's still in power, and the independent assessments are showing that they're rebuilding their ballistic missile arsenal. The Islamic regime viewing their ballistic missiles as their most effective weapon now. Dozens slipped through the Israeli and American air defenses, hitting us nightly here in Tel Aviv. And here's, as Netanyahu arrived, that question came up. Take a listen to what President Trump said when asked about Iran's ballistic missiles.
You support an attack, Israeli attack on Iran, if Iran will not have a deal, if Iran will continue with their ballistic missiles and also nuclear weapons.
If they will continue with the missiles, yes. The nuclear, fast. Okay. One will be yes, absolutely. The other was we'll do it immediately.
So during that June war, of course, all we talked about were the nuclear sites hitting Isfahan and Fordow, and that was the main thing, right? Taking away their ability to build a nuclear weapon. Goalposts moving a bit? I mean, that's the question right now, right, Rob? Is the ballistic missile program the main threat to Israel, of course, and a lot of American lives here in Israel? But the argument being made based on what we're hearing from Jerusalem is that, well, these ballistic missiles are getting more and more advanced, and they're getting harder to shoot down. Sometimes it's like hitting a bullet with a bullet in outer space, trying to intercept these things. And some of these will have, down the road, the range to reach American cities as well. And they already have the range to reach European cities. So that's really what we're hearing the argument turn into now about those ballistic missiles and the ballistic missile program that Iran has. We believe, based on what we're being told, they have about half of the ballistic missiles that they had at the start of that June war, even less the number of ballistic missile launchers, those mobile trucks that move them into position and allow them to be fired. So a real big question here going forward. Is it worth another round with Iran to try and take away their ballistic missile program? Is their nuclear program now totally gone off the table? That's going to be the question going forward. But as I texted with some sources around the Prime Minister's office, they think this meeting went phenomenal for Israel today, and that this was another great example of that special relationship that President Trump has with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Rob?
All right, Zach, thank you very much. Zach Anders live in Tel Aviv. All right, coming up, $110 million in fraud uncovered in a single day. Where? I'm sure you can guess, but we're going to tell you what's being done about it when the record continues.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, neither of us have any kind of sickness, and we're as flexible as we were 30 years ago, and we still do the physical things we did 30 years ago. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you. You won't believe it. Immuno 150 is an awesome nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it.
Yes, it really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order online or call the number listed on the screen, but don't place your order until after you've watched the videos on our website. Thank you from both of us, and God bless.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist-recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
At Allegiance, we do it differently. Flags 100% made in America, by Americans, with American materials.
We're proud to create jobs right here in South Carolina. It might not be the easiest way, but it's the right way.
We make American flags the way they should be made, where they should be made.
Join our pledge to keep the American flag truly American.
Visit showallegiance.com to get your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
Fraud in Minnesota. So on Friday, a 23-year-old YouTuber went viral for a video claiming to uncover widespread fraud in Minnesota's child care and welfare programs. Here's part of that video.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota, as literally billions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia. These fraudsters have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of dollars to be given to fraudulent businesses underneath welfare purposes. Some of this money eventually landed in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia like the Al-Shabaab, and others enriched themselves all at the U.S. taxpayers' expense.
A 23-year-old YouTuber. After that video was posted, the FBI Director Kash Patel took to X and wrote, "The FBI is aware of recent social media reports in Minnesota. However, even before the public conversation escalated online, the FBI had surged personnel and investigative resources to Minnesota to dismantle large-scale fraud schemes exploiting federal programs. The FBI believes this is just the tip of the very large iceberg." End quote. All right, back in court today, the man accused of shooting and killing Charlie Kirk. At stake is media access to the trial of Tyler Robinson. So part of the cases that have been unfolding behind closed doors is prompting calls for more transparency. So today in Utah, District Court Judge Tony Graff Jr. revealed that the media will get access to a redacted transcript and audio recordings from a closed hearing back in October. Now, as for cameras in the courtroom, there was no definitive answer from the judge on that. Both Robinson's defense team and the Utah County Sheriff's Office wanted the court to ban cameras. Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica Kirk, says there should be cameras in the courtroom. She says there is nothing to hide. Tyler Robinson, he'll be back in court a couple weeks from now on January 16th. All right, brace yourself. A new winter storm is hitting the East Coast, prompting new warnings and advisories. Millions of Americans are expected to see dangerous winds, snow, and ice. Storms are affecting the airports, too. According to FlightAware, there were more than 6,700 delays and more than 700 cancellations as of 4 p.m. Eastern. Meteorologist Amy Metz, she's here with the very latest. Amy, what's the bad news?
Thank you. Monday brought National Weather Service employees across the state of Illinois assessing damage reports. We are seeing that at least 2 of these are confirmed, possibly a third by the end of Monday. It was Sunday where dozens of warnings affected Kentucky, Illinois, and Indiana. These tornadoes are not in the picture anymore, but what's left behind are the blizzard warnings. That is going to persist and was active just north of those tornadoes the other day in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. That has been leading to a lot of flight cancellations and bad road conditions. That unfortunately is going to persist. The Great Lakes area will keep seeing a lot of this blizzard activity as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday. By then, Tuesday night, Wednesday, we're seeing some lake effect snow chances, likely to see up to a foot there in the next few days, just east of the Great Lakes regions and across the rest of the Northeast. Unfortunately, it could be slick roads here that we're battling on New Year's Eve. During celebrations, we will be having some snow falling. By Tuesday, it's going to be these overnight hours, Monday into Tuesday, where we see the rain transitioning into some sleet and then snowfall. That will be lingering through the New Year's and afterward. Unfortunately, I've got my eye on California once again, all the way up through Washington. We do have another atmospheric river setting up the first week of January. Back to you.
All right, keep those shovels out. All right, now to a story so heartwarming that it might just melt the ice. Over the weekend, the New York Islanders faced the New York Rangers, their rival. Before the game, World War II veteran, Army Staff Sergeant Dominic Critelli, he took to the ice and wowed the crowd. He's 104 years old. What strong lungs. God bless him. Thank you for your service. The Islanders shut out the Rangers, by the way, 2-0. All right, coming up, one American town has a scent that just won't go away. It smells nice sometimes. That when the record continues.
You hear the same voices.
Donald Trump knows that's a lie.
From the same people.
Donald Trump is less lucid.
Saying the same thing.
Insults, invective, and outright lies.
And you say, enough! I'm Chris Salcedo, and I'll tell you the real news. If you don't believe me, just tune in.
What if getting older didn't mean living with joint discomfort, brain fog, or low energy? Qualia Senolytic is the only all-in-one clinically tested formula with 9 ingredients designed to help your body clear aging cells. Taken just 2 days a month, this regimen works at the cellular level to rejuvenate energy and support longevity, helping you stay active and energized. With Qualia Senolytic, life truly gets better with age. Start today at qualialife.com/TV.
At Viasat, we believe every family deserves connection. Satellite internet that's fast, reliable, and installed by professionals. For work, for play, for every day. Internet plans made easy and affordable. Available anywhere you call home. Visit getviasat.com or call 877-VIASAT-7 to sign up today. That's getviasat.com or 877-842-7287. Viasat, internet without limits.
This isn't your average pill. This is Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks. Rose Sparks.
Rose Sparks is a fast-acting solution because it dissolves under your tongue.
Rose Sparks.
Guys, get started today.
Connect with a provider to find out if Rose Sparks are right for you.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
What do you say? I love you, and I'm alive. Eric was a 50 cal gunner. He wanted to help his fellow soldiers, and he served a total of 4 years.
What?
Twice, yeah, he did two tours in Iraq. He was hit by an armor-piercing round, right above his right ear, exited above his left ear.
They served with honor, and now it's our turn to help them. Join Wounded Warrior Project. Call or go online with your gift of just $19 a month to help America's injured warriors get the life-changing care they need.
Eric wanted a family so bad. That's the hardest thing when he looks at me and he says, when am I going to get married? He's so severely injured, he can't have his own kids. And he's not mad about it, but he's sad sometimes.
He's been through a tough life, and he's come through smiling.
Warriors like Eric need to know that we won't leave them behind. Our donors help us provide life-changing programs and services at no cost to warriors. Please call or go online with your gift of $19 a month, and we'll send you this blanket honoring the 250th anniversary of American independence and freedom.
Wounded Warrior Project, they have not forgotten the sacrifice that our family did.
They still know we're here. That means so much to me, because this is never over.
All the donors who keep believing in Eric, I can't put in words how much it means to him.
Thank you, he says.
The need is urgent. Please give a little to those who gave so much for us.
Dunkin' Donuts recently opened a facility in Haverhill, Massachusetts. It makes 1 million donuts a day. Might sound like Homer Simpson's dream come true, but not if you live there.
My house smells like donuts all the time. For the last 2 months, it's distracting and it's heavy. I live right near Tattersall Farm. I assume that anybody's going to the farm now that's taking a nice walk is just being overwhelmed by donut smell.
There's another constituent a few houses down that articulated and described the odor the exact same way. I think it was kind of a carnival smell with a fried dough kind of smell, and it's there kind of relatively frequent.
City Council has asked health inspectors to look into the issue. Have a good